So I'm delighted now to welcome and briefly introduce our next speaker, a familiar figure to us all, our Honorary Secretary, David McClay. David is Head of Development at the British School at Athens. Before taking up that post, he was at the University of Edinburgh Heritage Collections and the National Library of Scotland. David is also a former trustee of Abbotsford, the home of Sir Walter Scott. Again, someone who's absolutely steeped in the life and works of Scott. So I now invite David to propose a toast to the storytellers of Edinburgh.
Thank you, Madeleine. I'll leave this for later. So, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. President, the annual dinner provides a welcome opportunity to toast an organisation or institution with a connection or relevance to Sir Walter Scott. Many such are directly associated with Scott. Some are little changed since Scott's age, whilst others have evolved to meet the needs of the modern world. Then there are associations with bodies which were created after Scott's own day, but exemplify the interests and qualities embodied by Scott. One such aspect worth celebrating is Scott's consummate skill as a storyteller. We are delighted this evening to have Dr. Donald Smith, representing the Scottish Storytelling Centre, to reply to this toast. There is no one better, as he has dedicated his life and career to storytelling. We very much look forward to hearing from you shortly, Donald, but before doing so, let us briefly consider Scott's seminal role in Scottish storytelling. Scott combined a vivid imagination, dedicated research skills, and an incredible memory with exceptional writing and oratorical skills to become, in Alistair Hutton's bold description, Scotland's greatest storyteller. And who am I to argue with such an authority as our distinguished past chairman? And surely the evidence for such a boast is overwhelming. We know well, of course, Scott's brilliance as a novelist and his role in establishing the historical novel. These 27 novels alone should be enough to establish his storytelling credentials. But there are also his short stories, other prose works including biography, autobiography, letters, criticism and review, as well of course as his long narrative poetry and ballad collecting, as well as his gift for spoken conversation and anecdotes, which all display his passion and abilities as a great storyteller. Scott's novels and poetry frequently feature storyteller figures. Think of Wandering Willie or The Last Minstrel. And Scott often deployed storytellers to allow for multiple, often conflicting perspectives on historical events and traditions, including the fantastical tales of folklore, ghosts and witchcraft. Storytellers and oral storytelling tradition had an early appeal to Scott, and as a young man he made a determined effort to collect and publish that most ancient form of storytelling, oral ballads and songs, many of which were included in his important work, The Minstrelsy of the Scottish Borders. Scott himself was an entertaining and talented storyteller in person, especially to the constant stream of visitors to North Castle Street and to Edinburgh more broadly, or to his beloved Abbotsford and its surrounding borders countryside. One such visitor, the American writer Washington Irving, had been keen to visit Scott and to do so in the Borders, where Irving later wrote, Scott had first imbibed his passion for legendary tales, border traditions and old national songs and ballads. Irving added that the conversation of Scott was frank, hearty, picturesque and dramatic. During the time of my visit he inclined to the comic rather than the grave in his anecdotes and stories, and as such, I was told, was his general inclination. He relished a joke or a trait of humour in social intercourse and laughed with right good will. He talked not for effect nor display, but from the flow of his spirits, the stores of his memory, and the vigour of his imagination. He had a natural turn for narration, and his narratives and descriptions were without effort, yet wonderfully graphic. He placed the scene before you like a picture. He gave the dialogue with the appropriate dialect or peculiarities, and described the appearance and characters of his personages with that spirit and felicity evinced in his writings. Indeed, his conversation reminded me continually of his novels, and it seemed to me that during the whole time I was with him, he talked enough to fill volumes, and that they could not have been filled more delightfully. Scott's engaging storytelling ability was echoed by James Hogg, who wrote that Sir Walter Scott's conversation was always amusing, always interesting. There was conciseness, a candour, and a judiciousness in it which was never equalled. His anecdotes were without end, and I am almost certain they were all made offhand. Scott visited London in 1809 during that early flush of literary success and fame. According to John Gibson Lockhart, Scott there was the fashionable wonder of the year. The homage paid him would have turned the head of any less gifted man of eminence. It neither altered his opinions nor produced the affectation of despising it. On the contrary, he received it, cultivated it, and repaid it in its own coin. All this is very flattering, he would say, and very civil, and if people are amused with hearing me tell a parcel of old stories or recite a pack of ballads to lovely young girls and gaping matrons, they are easily pleased, and a man would be very ill-natured who could not give pleasure so cheaply conferred. Scott was then, in print and in person, a natural and gifted storyteller. But he has a word of caution for us. Of all the boring machines ever devised, your regular and determined storyteller is the most peremptory and powerful in his operations. Taking note of this, I shall draw to a close, before passing back to our chair, Madeleine Mackenzie, to introduce another consummate storyteller, Dr. Donald Smith. I would ask you to raise your glasses for the toast to the Scottish Storytelling Centre and Storytellers in the city of Edinburgh.
Storytellers.
Storytellers.